Thank you so much, Commissioner, and it's evident the enormous importance the Commission places on this whole subject. So what we're going to do next is we're going to have a report back from the workshop, and I'm going to invite to the stage a panel, and the panel is Arnis Augulis, Deputy Secretary for ICT here in Latvia, Jean-Paul Zens, from the Director of Ministry of Media and Communications in Luxembourg, Miapetra Kumpula-Natri, who's an MEP, and Robert Madelin. So if you would all come up. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, settle down. I know you've been overexcited by that speech, but settle down. Let's hear what the Twitter sphere has been saying about the content of this morning.
So this morning, the debate actually spread out according to the...
Can we have the lights up?
Yes, okay. According to the workshop. So it was great to see that we started in the morning with a focused debate on one hashtag, but then when all the participants went to different workshops, we saw huge debates and big interactions among all the workshops. In total, 850 tweets, unique tweets, have been sent only this morning, which means that it covers actually the whole amount of yesterday. So we really reached high numbers there. The key topics were the key words around consumer trust, cybersecurity, about startups as well. The most active tweeters were apparently in workshops about trust and e-society and industry. So these were the most trending workshops, let's say. And we are looking forward to the debate and to conclude the debate today in the final plenary.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a three-way conversation. Never been attempted before, ladies and gentlemen. It may go wrong, but we're hoping not. So we're going to have a three-way conversation between the rapporteur from the workshop, yourselves, and our distinguished panel here. Could we have the lights up, please? So I can see our audience. Right. So who is the first rapporteur to go? I think it's somebody who has to go for an airplane. Right. And you are from workshop?
Number 3.
You're workshop number 3, so you are David Cullen.
That's me.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so you have a couple of minutes to just tell us what your workshop thought.
Right. So workshop 3, for those of you not aware, looked at the connected digital single market, the actual underpinning of the broadband infrastructure to make everything we want to do in an economy successful. We started with a panel which considered the market conditions and the issues relating to transforming the current European telecommunications infrastructure environment to a digital communications infrastructure fit for purpose and available to all. The discussion focused then on 3 points. One, how the regulatory environment dramatically needed to change and enhance how it is working to make that happen, and in particular to expand connectivity and to drive investment through better competition and more players in the marketplace. We then looked at a World Cafe where all participants of the workshop took part and looked at their view on how we focused and adjusted the two main areas of connectivity and investment. The key findings from both the panel and the World Cafe are that the telecoms review currently underway needs to develop flexible and fast ways to respond to the market, which in telecoms terms is moving faster than regulation is able to catch up with it. And therefore to enable the new commercial business models that are actually entering to create better competition, better infrastructure, and basically create this digital economy platform. The connectivity area needed to look at new policy actions through the telecom framework, through increasing spectrum harmonisation and promoting that cooperation between telecoms operators currently to allow new entrants to develop new infrastructures. And finally, the infrastructure investment really needs to focus on creating effective competition, both in the existing networks, lots of networks across Europe which aren't actually even used for broadband at the moment, despite large amounts of fibre that exist, and also to create a collaboration of looking at a market that does infrastructure, services and content where they know how to do it best, rather than a traditional model of a vertically integrated way of looking at delivering telecommunications.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, and delivered precisely on time. Thank you so much. And we have, of course, these infographics for each of the workshops to just help you digest their content. So let's go next to workshop 1, and that was actually digital skills, which was held yesterday. And I think that that's Reinis Zitmanis. Is that right?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Thank you. Yesterday morning we had a workshop, Digital Skills for the Digital Single Market, and digital skills are actually cross-secting with almost everything we are speaking today of, including the infrastructure, investments, etc. So number one is we need to motivate people to engage in digital lifelong learning, so the learning never stops at the kindergarten, school, or university, lifelong learning. How to achieve that? And the key actions here are government should map intermediaries in their country and support them in their actions. Number two, government should support awareness raising campaigns. But we dig even further, and we went to the next one, which is motivation, and we need to motivate businesses to train people, to equip employees with adequate skills. Of course, the open question was there, who should pay for the training? And on the national level, there has to be some solutions and some ideas. Key actions here are companies to engage in designing training programs and to co-fund training with the public sector in line with their business needs, and stimulate digital skills sharing between enterprises and businesses. And this is new. I think it makes a good new initiative. Number three is strengthen digital skills partnerships. And here we are talking about businesses, education, governments, NGOs. Key actions here, government to support the national coalitions whose tasks should start from the assessment of the digital skills gaps in their member states. And here, if you look at the map right there on the screen, we don't see it all red, so 16 to go. Commission to link pledges to national coalitions under the Ground Coalition and to ensure sharing the best practices. It's very important to share what works and what does not. And finally, fundamentally enhance digital skills assessment. And key action here is education and businesses to develop new assessment standards for digital skills and support and increase online learning, the MOOCs. Because you see, in the future, demand will be for the skills, not for the grades. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. Thanks again for my workshop and all the contributions we had together and the team that helped me to put this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must admit, I feel like somebody on the Eurovision Song Contest, inviting voting from all the countries here. But and very important there, 40% of teachers lack training support on digital skills. Don't all we parents know that actually our 14 and 15-year-olds know so much more about digital than we do?
Yes, I also wanted to mention this one as well. And here, with the national coalitions, we should involve more academia. Not only the ITC sector that gives the feedback on the professions required and the skills required, but academia on how do we train them, who trains people. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, so let's move to our next workshop, which is number 2, and that's a digital single market for creative content, and it's Jennifer Baker.
I think there's some dispute over who's going next, but since you've introduced
I'm so sorry.
me, that's absolutely fine. So, creative content, so in other words, copyright. So it will come as no surprise to anyone in the room that there was a huge amount of dispute and disagreement. And I think in the end, we all just agreed to disagree. So very good luck to Mr. Oettinger and his team. I wouldn't want your job. The forthcoming proposals are going to have to tread some very difficult tightropes to agree common ground. But we did try to come up with 4 points. They're conclusions rather than consensuses. The first one was probably the most conclusive, which was that you can compete with free if you deploy attractive services to beat piracy. And there was a lot of emphasis on the fact that consumers don't always want free or cheap. Sometimes they are, willing to pay for good services. And there was a lot of points made from consumer groups that consumers do want to pay if they've got the opportunity to pay for what they want. The next was, of course, territorial licensing and geo-blocking. We could have had a whole session just on that, and we still wouldn't have agreed by the end of the day. But we tried to say that perhaps if we redefined territoriality by cultural affiliation rather than physical presence, we could maybe find a way to allow these cross-border access models to exist with the current business models. Again, no absolute consensus on that. Number 3, we said you cannot compare creative content with physical products, but that didn't stop us trying. And the analogies were not always helpful, but they allowed us a way to try to talk about abstract concepts. And finally, it was this idea of the consumer creator, where users should have the freedom to sort of transform content, play with it, maybe lend it, but only if accompanied by suitable revenue sharing with the original creators for viral transformations. We also, as you can probably imagine, talked an awful lot about piracy, but there was no way we were coming anywhere close to agreeing on how to manage it and how to deal with it. And the room, I have to say, when I asked for a show of hands, was 50-50 split. So good luck to everyone working on the new copyright proposals.
Yes, it was asking an awful lot of you. And Ieva, I did actually, get you in the wrong order. My apologies. So we're now building trust and confidence online, which was one of the things that most exercised the Twitter sphere.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So a short report from our discussions in building trust and confidence online. We focused on 3 areas, and we started the discussion on NIS directive. Audience was united in the fact that it is a needed document, and it will be a first legislative act for cybersecurity to harmonize not only our policies, but also our capabilities across 28 nations. The work on the directive is still going on, and in the EU we have discussed it more than 2 years, so for sure in this workshop there was very little time to discuss it at lengths necessary, but we are looking forward to its adoption and implementation. Then more tools, of course, are needed and used to build the trust and confidence online. And as you can see from the infogram picture, for example, on the cloud, all of those in the EU of us who are using internet, 44% decide not to use cloud, particularly of the security concern. So there is a room for improvement. Thus, we discussed the good practices that could be shared and multiplied in different audiences. Namely, we looked at such initiatives as responsible disclosure policy. It is something that makes us use the support of others. Let's call them a good neighbor that identifies our vulnerabilities and informs us and let us fix them. Then we also talked about information sharing platforms and awareness projects. Let me emphasize here that awareness is an important issue, and it has to be focused on certain topics so people would hear that, they would understand that, and they would apply it. And also importantly that all of those initiatives should be developed as a public-private initiatives, not top to bottom, so it would be more efficient and more applicable. And third, we discussed risk management topic, and we came to conclusions that it is a new culture, a new risk management culture. Nowadays, everyone is a participant in cybersecurity. We make decisions every day to click or not to click. So everyone must be aware and educated on risk management and must apply it. In this respect, this is not something elitarian anymore applied by banks or other big companies. It has to be democratized, and it has to be more accessible and understandable for everyone. With this, I conclude. Thank you very much. Thanks my workshop for great work.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's now move to James Waterworth, who I think is, hello, a digital single market for businesses and consumers.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Ours was quite a philosophical workshop, so I'm not sure these are going to be very precise. There was lots of good discussion, though. On balance, for consumers and businesses, digital single market, a good thing. But there are 4 things I'm primarily going to tell you about. First of all, we had a vote, which you can see the results of on the screen here, about whether technology is primarily an opportunity or a threat. And we had an overwhelming, I think it's 85% an opportunity, 15% a threat. And so one of the calls was for policymakers such as the European Commission to resist the tidal wave of vested interests which would be coming its way from certain people who may feel displaced by what's going on with regard to the internet. There are also a number of calls for simplifying various rules in cross-border transactions, which is the point of the digital single market policy, and VAT rules was one that came up several times. Secondly, we talked about the role of platforms, and on the positive side, there was discussion of the role they play in promoting cross-border and international commerce. But there were also criticisms in terms of access to platforms and whether all service providers or businesses could access those platforms. And then there was a general question about, well, what is a platform? Because everything from a car to an e-commerce platform is a platform. So there's lots of work to be done in deciding what these look like. Thirdly, we talked about reviews, consumer reviews versus market regulation. We had a debate and a vote, which was much closer, on whether consumer reviews online are sufficient for people to know what's going on, or whether there needs to be regulation. I think the score was 54% in favour of regulation and 46% in favour of consumer reviews. So that was an interesting discussion. And there were also mention of some of the challenges when hotels and restaurants, for example, are reviewed online, and whether these need to be verified and what happens if things go wrong in such review systems. Finally, we talked about the sharing economy, and it was very clear from people who'd attended academic conferences that there are so many aspects of and forms of the sharing economy that working out what to do with it requires a lot more consideration, that people felt it was very unlikely that some general horizontal regulation of the sharing economy would be necessary, and furthermore, indeed, that a great deal of regulation already exists. One of the hot topics has been taxation, and people pointed out that people already have an obligation to pay their taxes however they earn that money. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, a thoughtful, philosophical even feedback there. Let's now move to promoting e-society, which was workshop 5, and that's Lilita Sparāne.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, our workshop actually was very challenging because e-society actually includes all of us. During the day, we are a business or public institution representatives. During the evening, we are simply society. So we had a great panel with a very knowledgeable and experienced panelists, 8 of them. Even some of the participants called our panel as a daydream panelists. So, but I would say if there are no dreams, there are no results. And we had 19 topics after the panelist discussion with the participants, and that the main conclusion was that digitalization should not be the aim, but the mean, making our lives easier, simpler, and so on. We talked a lot about multilingual need, even during our lives when we have some danger situation and we are in some other countries. We talked about quality, availability, accessibility, about security as a must, and also much more. And during our discussion, our topic list went from 19 to 24, and then we had opportunity to vote. It was voluntarily voting by special voting machines, and Vivienne, we didn't put the match under their fingernails, as you mentioned in the morning, so the voting was very voluntarily. And the results you can see in the infogram. These are the top 10 priorities, but I would like to say that those 14, which were mentioned by the participants and the panelists, were not the less important. But if we would now go through 3 top, so we go with only once or once only, and in accordance with our neighbors, Estonians, we would say not even once principle. That means if I enter my data into the system, if I didn't do anything different, what I have to report that the public institutions should be able to work with my data even next year. The second one, it goes very closely with the once only. It's a user-friendly. And in general, according to the statistic, people are using public services only 2.6 times a year. It's not a lot. And if we would like them to do it in a digital world, we have big challenge. We have to have services that they would like to come back and do it digitally again. So the third one, again, goes very closely to the first two, and that's digital literacy. And as we saw in the morning in the short video, that still in the European Union, 40% need to be educated in the digitalization. And we have been discussing some more points, and I would like to say that about security, it doesn't mean that security on a 10th place, that we don't care, but we saw that security is must, but there should be a balance between administrative burden and human rights. Thank you very much to all our group, and thank you.
Thank you, that's very interesting. And could I just say that would you please tell Her Majesty's Inspectorates of Revenue and Customs in the UK that declaring taxes should take less than 5 minutes. I've never done it in less than 2 days. That's very good. So now let's go to I think it's our final workshop. And you're not Barbara?
No, I'm Mark Spelman.
Okay. I spotted that.
But I might be able to help you on workshop 6, if that's what you want.
Help me with workshop 6 then. Tell us who you are.
I'm Mark Spelman, and we were looking at the digitizing of industry and enterprises in Europe. And we had 3 major themes. One was looking at disruption, a more macro theme. The second was around data-driven business models. And the third was around the practicalities of what it's really like to be in a SME. And I think if I was to give you one key message, it was that what we wanted to test was real-life experiences and what was happening on the ground. So starting with disruption, we looked at what disruption means, new competitors, different strategies, value migrating, and new partnerships being formed. But the interesting issue that comes out of that are what are the opportunities and challenges. And one person said, we've got an 11-year-old who now is running his own business, and basically he invents it and he's going along and he's basically doing it day by day. You compare that on the other side with large corporates, many of whom are very fearful about disruption. So we see a spectrum between opportunity and challenge around the speed and scale of change. I think we had an interesting example from our Japanese friends who talked about aging. And I think one of the benefits that we can get out of the digital world is if we can link it very clearly to societal challenges, such as aging, and they talked about some of the smart robots that they're developing in Japan to help with that particular issue. Around, secondly, data-driven business models, I think we had 3 themes there: data, privacy, and infrastructure. Around data, a lot of need to distinguish, I think, between consumer data and industrial data. You can put that into real-life examples. We talked about weaving, we talked about connected cars, we talked about e-health, really understanding how data flows and what does that mean in terms of things like true privacy. When we talked about at the consumer end, I think there was an issue about how do you protect citizens, but when citizens are out there actually buying, what they're really looking for is convenience. And you have to recognize that balance between convenience on one side, which is what people are looking for when they buy as a consumer, and also protection. And that also has an aging dimension. And I think we also emphasized a lot the points around infrastructure and the need that you get scale in Europe if you've got good connectivity. And our final point was about SMEs. We had a very good example from Ireland, and basically the message was SMEs, particularly young entrepreneurs, don't understand the regulation, they can't read it, they don't understand the language, and we need to make sure we've got a very clear one-stop shop for actually helping particularly young entrepreneurs understand what the regulatory environment was. They said the real-world example was go to China to find the place if you wanted to manufacture and prototype, and then actually bring it back to Europe. And again, if we want to change that dynamic, we have to think about how we make it easy for people to prototype. And the key message that came out is young people do, and they worry about the regulations second. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So an enormously rich set of workshops there and a huge amount of information coming back. Let me go to trust, because that seems to be an issue that's kept on coming up again and again in the questions. And perhaps we could just go to the slide for that trust workshop. And I wonder if I could come to you, Miapetra. Your thoughts on trust in the internet. Just turn it on there.
Oops. Without trust, there's no users. Without users, there's no business. And without users, there's an old-fashioned government which thinks that there's a king and there's a people. So I think the e-governance is to bring us as a society the less hierarchical way, and for the business it's using it already, it's collective all the time. Data on the consumers' wishes to improve the thing, so even so much that we think that we cannot trust anymore the service providers, that they are taking something that we don't want. So I don't know if it's already too late to limit all the data. So the answer should be openness and awareness. And then somebody here said that we all should be the champions. We all should think whether we click or not. But I think we are on the era now that if you don't click, you don't get the service. So that's why I think there should be model of thinking, the data and openness, that you should know, be aware how your data is used and who is using it. But without trust, without privacy, there's no users, so that will be a very key element on, not the easy one, but will be the key element of the whole digitalization process, and Europe should deliver in that one.
But I was wondering, Jean-Paul, I mean, there was a suggestion there that the responsibility for safety and on the net should really be down to the consumer. But actually, and it was likened to road safety, but actually there's a difference, because cars are not deliberately trying to run us down, whereas on the internet there are criminals who are trying to do exactly that. And is it not really an analogy where we do need to protect people? We shouldn't put all the onus for safety on the consumer. And Robert, I wonder what you thought about that.
So I think on keeping consumers safe, as the Commissioner also said, consumer protection legislation remains needed. How are consumers vulnerable? So everybody has a different responsibility, but we all have some responsibility. The average consumer also has to be at least of average digital literacy, and as we see, we're not there yet. So it's consumer empowerment, but it can also be consumer protection. I don't think we're envisioning that we dump the consumer and let them get on with it.
Arnis, what was your thoughts on some of the things coming back today? Not necessarily about the trust. What struck you coming back from the workshops?
Talking about trust, or
well, no, in general, because there was a huge smorgasbord of issues and concerns. I mean, there you are in Latvia with the presidency. What most struck you?
Well, our presidency will soon be over, and then I will be back to my job as usual. And my job as usual is all around e-government and providing e-services to our people, and therefore the session number 5, e-society, was the one which is closest to my heart, so to say. And what came out of this, once only as a fundamental digital right was voted by the people sitting there at this workshop. Well, Latvia is one of these countries where actually it's possible to do tax declaration in less than 5 minutes. And that's because the implementation of once only in practice, what it needs basically 2 things. Technically, good architecture and the interoperability between information system services, not only government-owned, but also private institutions. But another thing which is needed is, again, trust. And me as a citizen, I need to trust that government treats my data well. And this is the precondition for allowing exchange of data between different governmental agencies. And if there is this trust from citizen to government, then once only is possible.
Jean-Paul Zens, of course, you're from Luxembourg. Luxembourg inherits the presidency next, and it will be in your court now to take on much of this work. What have you heard that has really struck you and that you will be wanting to take action on?
I must say that when listening to the audience, I came to the conclusion that we nearly agree all on everything, and that we know that we have to speed up the process. And when we then come to the point how to do so, and especially at the European institutional level, we do not always manage to do our homework at the political level as speedy as we should. And so what strikes me most is the fact that we agree on the objectives, that we might even agree mostly on the ways to do it, but we still lack the speed we need, and everybody has been insisting on the speed because technology is rapidly evolving. So we would like to use our presidency to with our, let's say, our experience as a founding member of the EU to bring all the parties together and to speed up, meaning that we would like to use our honest broker function to make sure that the 28 member states and the European Parliament and the Commission come rapidly to settlements of questions where we all know that they are important for the future of Europe. So I hope that with our experience of the last 30 years and the many presidencies we have been doing, we hope that we can play that role as an honest broker between all the parties and reach the objective to be to come very rapidly to conclusions in the most important elements that we have to face.
Robert, there were many presentations coming back from the workshops. Was there another subject that you thought, there's some interesting views there?
I was having a conversation over lunch about the wisdom of crowds, and somebody who'd been in a workshop that shall remain nameless said, it's terrible, they vote and they don't come up with my conclusions. On the contrary, I found it very instructive to see that when you ask a group of informed people such as this, what are the rights we actually need, the first three answers are really interesting. So once only is make it simple. The second answer is make it simple, and the third is educate me a bit more so that it feels simple. In other words, people are really saying what sells is what is convenient for me. And that's what we see driving internet uptake. And I think for us bureaucrats, it's a real challenge. Can we make tax returns aspirational so that you look forward to doing it?
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, the aspirational tax return.
So I actually think that the challenge here is that digital enables us to make things convenient for people in a way we've never been able to do before. And are we prepared to feel challenged by that? And I think, as I was saying earlier, not only having Latvia in this semester, but Luxembourg coming next, we have member states who are doing it for real. Can we accelerate our progress there? That's the big message I take away from this.
Mira, what's the big message that you heard? And how does it compare to experience in Finland?
Yeah, I've been in European Parliament for a year now, and I still haven't learned it. Why don't we have a better connectivity in the Europe? That's challenging because for me there is a case that, I don't know the figures if they are exactly the right, but when Martti Ahtisaari, the Nobel laureate, negotiated peace to Aachen in Indonesia, somebody told me that after 1 year, 1 million mobile phones sold there. Because now they could build the society, they build the infra for the digitalization too. So why we are lacking in connectivity in Europe? So is it really that we don't afford it, or is there some other tacklements? And I really think that that should be the basis. Without proper connectivity, there's no digital markets, there's no e-government, there's no services, and then there's no growth, and everything is looking at to get some back growth for Europe. So I really look forward to seeing even more what was debated there, and how should it be. There's a lot of good things that Europe could put money, maybe also here, but I also think there should be quite clear business cases. Or are we talking something a daydreaming? where everybody here has quite strong beliefs that digitalization is happening, and if we are not doing it, China is doing it, USA is doing it, and then we are just using it. So then that's why I think the whole ecosystem should be done here and based on that side. So I also think the price to be paid, it's not something you pay in a year or two, but that the whole digitalization will change the rhythm of the businesses and paybacks and so. But then also I'm thinking a lot to people's readiness to go for digitalization, because of there are talks even in the European Parliament that I don't want to be in the society that machines will decide over me. If I want to turn my car left, and machine decides the other way around. So as an engineer, I really want to think that digitalization in the end is to put ones and zeros on a line in the different order, and then that they can put real life into the machines. But then in the end, we need good people to understand life, and that's for the digital skills. We are needing more analytics, more very well-educated people, but in the end, using a proper services, let's say e-government services, if it's a good apps, good applications, it's don't even need literacy. My son was using tablets before he learned to read any language. So there's also the opportunities that we can make simple services for everybody to be involved. So inclusive digital society is really an issue on the infra, but then on the capabilities of using, and then providing public services that are so easy, and the most easy applications that you just click on and then you're connected. For example, your taxation, that with one click you said, no comments, that was right by the government proposal. Finland is one of those that I only need to use 30 seconds for my tax clearance per year.
So actually, I was very struck. I've just come back from the US. Now in Europe, almost all of Europe, internet is free in most hotels. In American hotels, it's very expensive, and it's very expensive still in American hotels that are in Europe. And I think actually that says a lot about what Europeans feel about connectivity, that actually it's as important to them as sheets, towels, and in breakfast in a hotel, whereas for the Americans it's an add-on. So I think actually that's perhaps a foolish, rather anecdotal thing, but it is actually a guide to how important we think connectivity is in Europe. But I wanted to open the conversation to our audience, who I hope have been stimulated by some of the presentations we've had back from the workshops. So can we have the lights up? Is it possible to have some of the slides back? I was looking for Manuel. We were hoping to have some of the slides back. But meanwhile, questions from the audience? Thoughts from you? They've been struck dumb by the sheer enormity. There's a question right at the back there.
Gudrun Magnusdotter from Esteem. Actually, it's more of a statement than a question. From the perspective and the experience that I've had over the 30 years having to do with the EU, there will be no digital single market without multilinguality. Because if we can't cross the borders, there is not going to be a single market. So this is my end statement. Thank you for the conference.
Multilinguality, who wants to take that? Robert.
If I can just pick it up, I mean, as I was saying in my remarks, was it only yesterday, I agree. I think that we overestimate in a group such as this how few people feel comfortable or trusting operating in a second or third language, and therefore we seriously underestimate how much value we're losing by not having a multilingual service in the single market. The second thing I would like to comment on, though, is to link that comment with the interesting finding from the group on creative content.
Yes, could we go to the creative content one now?
That somehow we could define markets by cultural desires, maybe linguistic is part of that, rather than by the territory of member states. I think that's a really interesting opportunity. And it would lead me then to a third point, which is that sort of vision might work best for the languages with smaller numbers of mother tongue speakers. In other words, I could imagine a sort of Estonian exclusive contract, for example. An English exclusive contract might not work because there are such a lot of people who would consume creative content in English even if it was their second language. But what that opens up is a question about order of priority. So whether we're talking about multilingualism or whether we're talking about cultural exclusivity, can we in Europe agree not to do it all at the same speed for everybody? And I think that's a question that we're coming to. It's a sort of paradox that we're going to get a telecom single market, we're going to get a digital single market, perhaps more quickly if we can differentiate the slightly different needs in terms of transition for big and small economies, for big and small member states, for large and small language groups. And we need to play with that a bit. Do we trust each other enough to have different speeds of transition for different countries? Usually not. Usually we pretend we've set a single date for transition, and then in practice different countries either meet it or don't meet it. So I think there's a really interesting political point underlying the multilingual and the multicultural aspect of what we're doing in Europe.
Jean-Paul, any thoughts on that?
Yes, as a representative of a smaller member state, I can fully adhere to these thoughts. Luxembourg has experienced a very strange fact that digitalization that should normally be opening borders is in fact closing borders down, because by geo-blocking and other techniques you bring content close to the user, but he cannot use it. He sees it like looking at the window, but afterwards he cannot buy it for a lot of complex reasons. And that's not very helpful for making the digital single market vision something to be accepted and adopted by consumers. The same is of course true for the roaming discussion. So I think in our discussion that we will have in the future, we should also take care that we can serve something very concrete to the citizens and the consumers so that they adhere to our big vision. If I remember that 1 week ago we celebrated together the 30 years of the Schengen Agreement, and the Schengen Agreement was considered to be a very constructive and positive perception of citizens what Europe brings to them. I think we might need a kind of a digital Schengen for the future.
Okay, we've got another question here. If we could get a microphone for this gentleman. We are seeing the whole digital, it's like a rising tide. It's just sweeping through every part of society. And I thought what was very interesting is only 10%, I think, of industries that haven't got some digital skills requirement. I mean, it is becoming ubiquitous.
Sorry, I've just moved a little bit.
Yes, that was slightly confusing.
Just to return to the access and multilingual, my name's Tim Fairhurst from the European Tourism Association. If we look at the economic impact, tourism is something like 12% of EU employment, 10% of GDP. If we want to attract more people whose languages are not among the EU languages, we need to ensure that visitors coming from outside the EU have a very good experience and can access all these wonderful digital services as cities try and make their online material available. So there's obviously a cost element to do with roaming, as well as making sure that people who have non-European languages feel welcome. And only something like 15% of all those international arrivals come from outside the EU at the moment. It's a huge opportunity for Europe, and we shouldn't forget that audience.
Okay, but I now want a question from you, which is...
What can you do to make sure that visitors who are not within the EU roaming arrangements are not going to have to pay a fortune to access digital Europe?
Okay. I think that one's for you, Robert.
So if I start with the non-European languages point, I think it's really interesting. As you know, we have the Euronews platform, and one of the things that the Commission is currently doing is asking itself the question, what's our soft diplomacy global language strategy? Some of the UN languages, we have them because they're European, so Spanish, English, Russian, Euronews has always done. Should we do Mandarin? So that's the sort of question that we're also asking ourselves in Brussels on a sort of diplomatic front. And I think that if we had a big, sexy, multilingual engine, then adding a few extra languages, perhaps with very large user populations, would be trivial. But we don't have the engine yet. So the cloud for languages first, European citizens maybe first, but then I think your point is a fair one. On roaming, step by step. It kills me, absolutely kills me, that we can't get the Parliament and the Council and the Commission to agree on ending roaming now. And the reason we can't is actually related to my point about big countries, small countries, that big incumbents in big countries can deal with roaming today because they can cross off their costs. If you're a small operator, efficient but lean in a small country like the one we're sitting in, the cost of ending roaming may be more disruptive. So do we talk about differential transition periods? Not yet. Should we? Maybe. Only when we've got rid of it in Europe can we then turn to the rest of the world and begin negotiating a fair deal across the world. In the same way as Commissioner Oettinger in the 5G space was saying, we've got a 5G coalition and now we're challenging the Chinese, Japanese, Americans to join us and make a single standard. So the digital single market is the lever from which, or it's the fixed point from which we can leverage the rest of the world. But we have to build at home first, and alas, we're not going fast.
Okay, question over here.
Well, it's more a plea rather than a question. My name is Matthias Spielkamp. I'm a journalist from Berlin, and what we're doing right now is we are building a new online platform that is supposed to educate users on security on mobile devices. And it's been funded by the German Ministry for Justice and Consumer Protection because there is no such thing in Germany right now where you can find consolidated information on security issues for mobile devices. And there's a reason for it, because the companies don't want you to read that. Because if you did, you would find out that security on these devices is basically a pig stall. And what made me a little nervous was that when I saw these results from the workshop on trust, there was one result, if I remember correctly, 44% are not using cloud because of security concerns. Well, I don't know what the question was there, but if people had been asked, do you use Google on Android, then I guess there would have been a different result, because people just don't know that they're using cloud, right? Because if they're using Google and Android, they are using cloud already. And that ties into that entire question of literacy, and that was the second thing that made me nervous, because someone said, risk management, it doesn't just have to be done by banks, it has to be done by the individual consumer. Don't let anyone tell you that the individual consumer can do risk management for security on mobile devices. Don't let anyone tell you that.
Actually, that was a very helpful thought. Mira, your reaction?
We are in the phase that what worries me, that if I try to tick when I take the new mobile, whatever model, or whatever internet page, that this will accept, do you want to accept cookies, or do you want to share your location or whatever? How often you put no, so then it closes and say bye. So that's the problem of today, that you cannot use the services if you don't let your information to be used. And is that a consumer protection then? Or then you have the 5 pages to read that in the end it says the crossing tick here, and then you are given the permission. It's not protecting me as a citizen. So if you translate that in Germany in the internet, so I don't know what I learn more. I'm an engineer from my behind NMT time, if somebody remembers that, before the 4G, 3G, the Nordic mobile technologies time. So, but then I think the consumer right has to be there in the better protects it, but how to make it in the way that it will still allow European innovations, that they don't escape to make the innovations on America or Asia, which is not conducting the rights of the consumers and privacy at the same level. So there is very big task for the Commission to come with a proper, good proposal. But then also I said earlier here that the openness is one thing, that once you know what is used, what is copies, where it's stored, then you can maybe put some of your pictures, but maybe your health information, or you can think a little bit that if I want to use that, can I let them know that? And then make clear rules that when it's big data that is working for us, but it's not working for your private information, but it's it doesn't say who the private person is, but it gives us a mass data, so that's also good for the services we are going to have later. But my question is that are we too late, or are we still in the phase that 500,000 consumers, as we are in Europe, can say some rules for the world trade, for our own rules, that consumer means something shorter, easily understandable, and then tick the cross if you still agree. That would be my hope and future view, that we should aim on that.
Arnis, I was wondering what you were thinking about this. I mean, isn't it unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen, they chose the word cloud, fluffy, not very secure, and drops things on you. So, you know, the very word cloud does not inspire public confidence. If we called it a rock, it would have been fine. Arnis.
Yeah, I agree. Also, all the statistics showing 44% or whatever people don't trust the cloud. It's a matter of perception, and we have a lot of discussions also internally within government, between governmental institutions. What is more safer, more secure from technical point of view? If you have your own server under your desk, and your ICT person who takes care and looks at it twice a day, or the same server or information actually which is on the server is put in secure place, protected by the team of competent specialists, and the government just receives it as a cloud service. In terms of security, I would argue that much more security can be actually received from the second case, from the cloud service. And
so, but that, to go back to you, Robert, does that not mean that digital literacy is a hugely important area, because people just simply don't understand? I mean, they think, as I said, that clouds are fluffy and not very secure. So is digital literacy really the underpinning point here?
So I'm not sure quite if I can answer this in a succinct way. I think that I'm not as worried as the question initially was about the answers coming out of the panels. What I think we have to remember is that trust comes with what I think of as the 2 C's. I mean, the first is control. So actually, I need to feel a bit in control, and then I feel a lot more trusting, and that can be good or bad. It can be true or false. But then the second C is convenience, which will always trump control and trust and security. So the onus on public actors, I think, is first and foremost to design convenient systems which are safe enough. So that's a duty on the designers. The duty on the citizen is to understand enough not to screw up the system. And as the example of kids playing with tablets shows, we can understand enough to play with the system before we understand enough not to screw it up. And so the nice thing about a tablet is you can play with it as a child without messing it up, because you can't access directly from the screen the commands that would close the whole thing down or set it on fire. And I think that it's that interaction between what people can be expected to do, making it intuitive for them to do it, and designing so that if they behave intuitively, it's safe. It's an architectural problem, and it's not us or them. I absolutely agree, for example, that I should be responsible for not writing down my PIN code for my bank account next to my token, but I'm not responsible for the rest if somebody sort of rips it off in a hole-in-the-wall cash machine. So I think we have to define in law the roles and responsibilities, but we have to be very multidisciplinary in understanding what will help individual citizens to be as safe as possible. And so I think, to pick up a point that Mira said, you need lots of disciplines to get ready for this. We can't say it's all about engineers or it's all about policemen. You actually need social anthropologists, you need psychologists, you need a lot more of soft disciplines cooperating in this game. And then I think it can be fluffy or hard, but people will know what they're doing with it. And as long as people don't know, they will feel illiterate, they will feel untrusting, and whatever the system, you'll get less good things out of it. So making it feel right for people will help the whole of society to go in the right direction.
But does that not also mean that companies need to be more transparent about what they're actually doing? Because it's a Faustian pact, isn't it? When you have a very convenient service, but the trade-off is that your data is used in all sorts of ways, and people don't quite understand what that means, or what having cookies or all those other sorts of things. So is transparency, Jean-Paul, the issue here?
That's the key word that we should add to these comments, is that we should give the consumer the feeling that he knows what happens behind the curtains. And that creates part of the trust. So literacy is important, but not knowing what's really happening behind the curtain is always creating mistrust. So we have to identify ways, and I think technology can help us there, because we can enable the consumer with new services based on technology to get a better feeling that he knows what's happening behind, who has what kinds of cookie of him, maybe he can take them back if he doesn't no more use them. So if we find tools that enable the consumer to get a better sense of transparency, I think we will add a lot to this discussion.
And there is always the suspicion that actually one's data is being sold and that you're not being part of the value chain. In other words, you're being offered a minimal service, but actually it's your data that is really the value transaction, and you don't have any control over it.
That was exactly the point I was making. If technology can help us to give the control back to the consumer, that he knows what he has given away, and he could also decide when he takes it back, I think this is linked to a literacy process. I think this combination would become very effective.
But if I can make another point, this is a case where I think more regulation, but not in the privacy space, could just enable innovation to go forward more easily. Why do we fear people fiddling with our data? Because they will fix the price when they advertise to us online, because they will fix the price of our insurance premium once they've seen our genome and what we're going to die for. And as a result, we get stuck in the data and privacy space. We're always going to lose there, because big data, data science, data everywhere is the new reality. But if you go across to the social consequences, that's, I think, where society needs to have a debate. Should we better regulate genomic-inspired differentiation of insurance premium? I would say yes. That's something we can and should have a look at. Can we prohibit, can we blacklist as yet another bad business-to-consumer practice, personal profile-driven price differentiation online? In law, it's fairly simple to blacklist it. We have a series of consumer sales practices which are blacklisted. So I think we can protect citizens against bad consequences of open data use, in some cases more easily than we can prevent open data use. And that's a debate society needs to have. Because if we could protect ourselves against the consequences, we can then all put our genomes in a big computer in Cambridge or Oxford or some other university town and save citizens' lives as a result. And that's a big plus. We could actually get access to better offers online without worrying about price gouging. And that's a better result. So I think we have to step alongside the privacy debate into the social debate.
I'm in another life, I'm head of public engagement of the 100,000 Genomes Project in the UK, and insurance is going to be a major debate that we're all going to have because, of course, we'll all be in the same boat. It won't be that one has this and one doesn't have that. We've all got something, but that's to digress. Ladies and gentlemen, more questions from you. Sir, down here.
Manus Hanratty from FIT, Fast Track to IT, Dublin, Ireland. I just want to reiterate something I said the other day about speed. As you all know, technology is moving at the speed of light and everybody else is moving at the speed of sound, sort of thing. And because of that, all these gaps we talk about, technology, skills gaps, jobs gaps, all kinds of gaps, knowledge gaps, they're actually going to grow even wider as time goes on. It's not going to ever it's never going to get fixed. So it really makes me wonder how we're going to just start doing some of this stuff a lot quicker, because I don't think we can just do all the things I mean, in the last 2 days I've heard about 2 zillion things we have to do. But, you know, if we come to this meeting this time next year and we're still talking about the things, we'll be even worse off. So we have to really get focused on not just short-term things, but instant things that we can do really, really quickly, because we don't have time anymore for...
Okay, Jean-Paul, I'm looking at you because, you know, the presidency is in your space very soon. I mean, speed is of the utmost. I mean, partly because this stuff is moving so very quickly and we're all going to get left behind in every possible sense if we don't move quickly.
So, as I said at my introductory statement, we will put all our experience in bringing and building bridges and bringing all the actors together, because we all agree that we have to speed up. But in one way, we must also admit that a democratic process needs time. And so the democratic process is a little bit in conflict of interest with the speed we need to go further. So probably we also would have to think about new ways of taking decisions in the EU. But this is maybe a far-leading discussion that is better for another conference.
And perhaps this is an area where we shouldn't be afraid to say, actually, do you know, that wasn't the right policy. We made a mistake. And to announce that freely and openly, but then come up with something better. So perhaps this is an iterative process. But we need to close. So, Robert, your final thoughts on this?
So my final thought on that point is what I said this morning, that actually don't wait for government to do it. And I think I would then go on to say that what's great about a meeting like this is that the bureaucrats are in a minority. It should always be like that. And I personally have enjoyed immensely not only your organisation from the stage, but what the hosts and my own colleagues and all the others who've animated the different groups have been able to bring. I think that some of the ideas here reinforce instincts that are in the air in Brussels. Some challenge the instincts in the air, and some are new. What I think is crucial now, therefore, is that as these conversations continue online, we keep some of you new voices and ideas in the game. So I'm hopeful that the fact that we can continue this work in our networks online means that we will have acquired not just a few ideas and a longer to-do list, but some new talents as a result of this two-day meeting. But you know, I've enjoyed it. I hope everybody else has.
I'm going to give the final word to Arnis. You've been the hosts for this splendid event and this wonderful building, which I hope will have had a lot of advertising and that people will come to it often in the future, because it's a great, great venue. Your final thoughts?
Well, thanks for good words, and I'm starting to feeling happy about these 2 days, which are now close, almost over, and it's really good to see so many smiling faces and a lot of good thoughts and ideas coming out. But to conclude, I would really like to refer to what our Prime Minister said yesterday. since the assembly was all about the new digital single market strategy, well, she said, strategy is good, thank you, Commission. But now the key is the implementation, and she used the word swift and wise implementation. Swift is about speed, need for speed, and we hope also for Mr. Timmerman and his toolbox of co-regulation, smart regulation. And about, yeah, that's about it. We have experienced during Latvian presidency how hard this democratic process of decision-taking actually is. And hoping that we have done a good job, but good luck also to Luxembourg to continue.
I'm going to just unilaterally declare that Latvia have done a wonderful job. Thank you so much.